Welcome to Locked In, your source for college football intel. We want to give a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to our channel this month. We've had a blast talking football with you. If you enjoy this video and want to see more great content, please like it and subscribe to the channel. Even more, share our videos with your friends. Again, thanks for being locked in. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're going to take up a little bit different of a subject than what we have been talking about lately. And we're going to still stay in the broader picture of the 2023-24 national championship race. But we're going to move back to a game that occurred slightly before and that had, a lot of bearing on who wound up in the playoff. And that's the Georgia versus Alabama SEC championship game. And outside of Florida State, no doubt the Georgia fan base and the players, coaches, all um, feel that they were left out, and that's a conversation that we've heard a lot because as we've said different times, we are in we're in SEC country. At least Chance and I are still in SEC country. Rev being in Virginia, I'm in Georgia, and Chance is just over the line in Chattanooga. So we hear a lot of these conversations um, from friends, neighbors, coworkers, whoever it may be that we encounter. And so tonight, we wanted to turn our focus to that game and maybe look at it. And I guess that we probably all have different perspectives. Um, Chance is a committed Georgia fan, but the thing that I'll always say about him is that he is a highly objective fan. He's always got a good perspective on it, and he'll tell you the truth about a team where a lot of people won't. So expect that to come out in the talks that we have on this game. Um, as for Rev and myself, we're not as committed of SEC people as some are. Rev's not at all. I guess I'm kind of in the middle on this one because I'm half in, half out, I guess you could say, on being just a diehard SEC man. But I think there are a lot of interesting perspectives that can come out of looking at this football game. And one of the things that I bring to it is just the question of was uh, was there something about Georgia's performance in that championship game that led to them not making the playoff? And then, the follow up question that I have, whether that gets, answered or even addressed in this particular show, is, is that fair? That because lots of people, and I understand the argument, feel that Georgia went 29-1, and the one loss was the one that dumped them out of the playoff picture in the 2024 playoffs. So there's lots of contention here, lots of interesting things to talk about. But really, I think to begin with, we're probably just going to look at a little bit of the game, especially the beginning of the game. Guys, is there anything that you want to say just I guess by way of just leading off before we jump into film?
I think taking a look at the multiple conversations there were, different sides of this, where it came from on the field play, past stuff, past teams, different looks of this team, I think is a good angle to take as we go through this video. Yeah, I definitely want to get into the film and kind of analyze how they played in this game. And I don't know if the committee, I know they're supposed to, but I don't know how heavy the committee really breaks down film the way that we are. I know they say they do, but based on other things, I'm not sure. So that is one thing that we'll see when you're watching this. Uh, the weaknesses that Georgia shows throughout the SEC championship game that kind of are a little bit more glaring than I think some people realize, and even Chance is willing to admit that as a diehard Georgia fan. But as we go through this film, I think we'll see some instances where, like, okay, this doesn't really make much sense, whether it be from play calling or just kind of alignment or setup, or just players not being what they were in the past or what they're expected to be at the University of Georgia. So I think we're going to look at all of that and kind of encompass a I don't know how what kind of thoughts we're going to have at the conclusion of this, but this will just be a dive into an example of Georgia's on-field play, and then a conversation or a more broad conversation about them in general from this year going into next year, and a little bit of talk about past years.
Yeah, you see Georgia do what they've done all year. They didn't really change too much about anything they've done. But what you did see is Alabama change. They didn't really come into this game plan thinking that Georgia would be able to do some things that they did. They came in thinking that Georgia would be able to run the ball, so they was going to sell out to stop that. But at the same time, you have to realize at this point in the season, Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey and I think it was Raw Thomas was all hurt at the same time, and that's three of their most productive wide receivers, or I guess you'd say tight ends as well. But receiving weapons, they're all hurt, and they're still playing, but hurt. So you have three starters that just aren't as productive as the typical day. So why not sell out to stop the run? Well, they tried doing that at first, but they just used the wrong scheme, and I think that's what we'll get into right here.
All right, starting off with the very first drive for Georgia. This is the best drive of the game for Georgia, and they look like a complete dominant team in their opening drive. Bama already had to punt.
What you'll see is Bama doing what they've done all year, playing split field. Basically, there's going to be a safety on one side of the field, and this half of the defense is running one thing while the other half is running the other thing. They both have different calls. Usually, it's Caleb Downs giving all the calls, even as a true freshman. So you'll see a too high safety look most times, and especially on the first drive, they run that too high safety split field, and they're usually off the ball. You'll see it a lot on this first drive. They really give the receivers room to run and make things happen underneath, and it really doesn't work out for them. You can see them even roll coverage right here, um, even under and overneath. You'll see them roll, but what's there is the flats, and that's just because nobody is playing up on the flats. And they start off the game by doing this, and they eventually get away from it. But Georgia takes what's given to them, and they make very easy play calls. And they use their motion, they use their bunches, they use their tight ends, and they just make things happen where the space is. You see green grass, you take it. If Alabama wants to play 10 yards off the ball and don't not cover the flats, then let's throw to the flats. And that's exactly what Georgia does, and it works out for them.
This is something that I noticed while going through this film. It happens on this drive, and it also happens later on in the game. That's just not quite picked up the same way for Georgia's offense. Alabama has a weird adjustment to motion, and what it looks like. I mean, you can see Alabama communicating when this guy comes in motion. You can see all these guys talking, and hey, someone needs to be accountable for six coming across. You see that on the edge there, and then you see in the back end, number two is responding, and he's given a call to a corner that doesn't look at him. So if you just saw and kind of here paused it, the safety is looking at the corner, almost as if he's expecting the corner to be looking back to maybe trade off responsibility here. But instead, corner stays locked in and goes with his guy. And as you saw by steps, the safety also went inside, which leaves the guy in motion completely open. There's just nobody out here to cover him. And there's a couple of different times in this game that Alabama just responds in a really weird way to motion. They give a lot of space. Sometimes, like in this play, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was busted. Other times, I feel like they were just not as concerned with guys in motion because they were just keeping everything in front of them, and they weren't quite worried. Especially this first drive, they were not quite worried about the run game as much, or they weren't quite worried about underneath passing. They were just going to rally to everything. But as we see in this drive, Georgia just keeps taking advantage of it, and Alabama doesn't really adjust to it.
Well, if you look at it, they have 5 men on the line pretty much the whole entire first drive.
Yep.
And their whole box is playing run first, saying, let's put this box in. We're gonna be gap sound in every gap. We're gonna worry about the run first. We're gonna go too high. We're gonna play man when one comes off. And we're gonna just mainly worry about the run because that's what they know Georgia's good at and what Georgia's probably gonna hurt them on. And Georgia just does not really do that as much. They really just sell out on the underneath flats. And you see them here try to run a toss. They get 3 yards. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's like you run that once a game, if we're being honest.
Yeah, we're going to circle that toss play because that will be a big topic of conversation as we go through this video.
I I went to the SEC championship, and as soon as it was over, my perspective was third down play calling and us calling tosses all night is what lost us the game. I think we ran it about 6 or 7 times all night, the just
Yeah.
that little toss, and I
And
think that's ultimately what cost us.
the thing too with that is that if you consider what they've just done, the the toss play, which I mean, this we're still on the pass right here, but the toss that they run, they're getting the same effect out of these pass plays to the flat, and that's what I don't quite understand, and especially right here. And I know that what we've said about maybe there's a miscommunication. I think that you definitely see it because if you look at uh, the safety on the right hand side of the defense, which is to the bottom of the screen, the thing that that makes me think that Rev, you're probably right, is just his posture whenever he puts his hand on his wrist. I think that he is trying to say whenever they're making their adjustments here, I think that he's trying to tell this cornerback that he taps the inside arm, he's reading whoever comes inside, he's got him. So
Right.
I think that what they're doing right here is they're playing basic defense that you'll see, at more advanced levels, even higher level high school, called two read. And what you're doing is you are literally reading the number two or the inside receiver. So when we see six come out to the flat here, the safety, I believe, is anticipating that the corner will cover him and he will take the outside receiver who is clearly on an inside release. And if you do that, then the cornerback is right there at the line of scrimmage, can deal with number six, and the safety can handle the outside receiver who is coming into the hash area. Everything's covered, and there's probably going to be a quick tackle made on number six, but that doesn't happen. And so I guess my question here, not necessarily for y'all, but just my question is, if you have if you have this much really just unguarded, or I guess unprevented access to the flat, why not run it this way? Because this is much more effective. Don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
wasn't calling the plays, but I mean, I think that you're accomplishing the same objectives, but with better allocation of your blockers, of receivers, more space to play in. It just doesn't make sense why they moved away from this.
So something else that, since we're back on this play, we talked about Alabama's commitment to stop the run, so they put 5 guys on the line. This guy off the edge right here on the right side, if this is more of a normal look, if they go four, they go three. If they go three-man down and they have four backers, typically, if they don't have them up on the line like this, you'd see them back at linebacker position, maybe a little bit further out. And instead of this guy's first steps being back when he reads pass, off the line trying to get back to linebacker position, he's already going to have some depth. And if typically a guy in motion, a linebacker, if you don't have a safety assigned to it, a linebacker is going to bump with that. There will be something that the linebackers do to adjust to having another guy over to their side of the field. And because of Alabama's commitment to stop the run game, these guys who are down on the line, committed to the run, when pass opens up and they still do have zone responsibility, that's extra steps that are required for them to get to and to get out to. So on this play, a lot of times you would see a linebacker much closer to this ball before you would see a linebacker much closer to the ball before the ball's ever thrown, and there's just not all this free space that you're getting. Or a corner would come down on it and you have a outside backer or a safety taking the other guy, like we talked about. But generally speaking, you would have another person who is closer to this, whether in hook curl or coming down to flats, rather than all this open space. So not one, you have a miscommunication from a safety in a corner. We're pretty sure that we're seeing that here. And also because of a commitment to the run and to worrying about that first, you were just leaving so much empty space, and you're making your backers or your outside, your edge guy, his job all of a sudden gets a lot harder because he is concerned about run. His mind is on run. When he reads pass, which is a second later than it really should be, he has to then get back to his spot, which he's already 3 yards removed out of. If he's playing linebacker spot on this play, he can come straight across and come affect this play a lot sooner. But as this play is, frozen right here, the closest guy is on the hash. 6 is making this play on the line of scrimmage at the numbers, and there's a lot of green grass in between the two of them. He would be at least halfway down closer to make this play, or at least slow 6 up. So really good job by Georgia to take advantage of what they're being given, and also very strange by Alabama to just give up so much space.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be thinking that Georgia would exploit it with them being as good as they are, but obviously Alabama realizes this and changes their defense. But staying on that first drive, so Georgia gets a good run here, and they have more blockers than Alabama has defenders. So Georgia gets a good 4 yards here, but they was still crashing hard on that. They have athletes. It's hard to get outside, but when you have 7 guys inside the tackles, pretty much, if not 6 or 7 guys inside the tackles on your offense, then you're going to be able to get outside a lot easier, especially with the flats being given up. They're not playing down. So the toss there was a good idea, just maybe not so much later on. You'll see here them change their play, Georgia being that is, and shift into 2 doubles on each side. And you'll see them right here motion over with Donovan Edwards or not Edwards, but Dejon Edwards. You'll see Dejon go in motion and just catch a little flat out here, or a little swing pass into the flats, and there's nobody there. You'll see the safety come down. You'll see the corner roll over top, but Brock's there, and you have the other wide receiver to cover him there. So I mean, you really have nobody playing true flats. It's just pretty much man.
Mhm.
And that's the thing with these linebackers being the edge rushers and your middle linebackers playing hook curl over the middle or that mid zone. There's nobody in the flats. And Alabama's stuck with this their whole drive, and I'm surprised they didn't change it earlier.
So something along those lines, a lot of times, at least is something that I like to do with my inside guys, whether it's from a 3 or a 2 from the inside. These linebackers, they have hook curl responsibility, and they're really supposed to get in the way of these inside receivers releasing, or sorry, these slot receivers having inside releases. So slant, like quick slants, that kind of thing. You want to get in the way of that because that's a very quick throw for the quarterback. It's normally like a quick gainer, and it also helps quarterback build a little bit of confidence. And then on top of it, a lot of times what you'll tell those backers, especially when you're sitting in a set like Alabama is, they got one high because they have a safety over top of number 2. You want those backers to get outside if a running back releases, one of them. So there's one running back, you got 2 backers. One backer is going to stay home for the quarterback, and the other one was going to go wherever the running back goes. So you have a zone, but when that man releases, if he's not staying in on pass protect and he's releasing left or right or up the middle, that guy needs to be accounted for by one of your inside guys. Now you see the Bama backer, he does account for it, but it's late. And the guy's already going in motion. Once this is definitely a pass, he's a little bit late getting there, and he's also just kind of slow. I mean, he's an inside backer, so I get it. But there's like Chance said, there is no true flats player, and the guy who should be responsible for that back is slow getting there. And Georgia does a good job utilizing their space. They're given the space, they use it. And then of course, tush push, quarterback sneak, whatever you want to call it on that play.
Yeah, and they get a good surge there. They get
They
about
do.
3 yards. So I mean, that's a brilliant surge for an O line to get a push on. Here you see them go tight double wing here, bring everybody inside, and look what Alabama does. We're going to bring everybody inside to stop it. And what happens? Well, Carson Beck goes right over top of them, roll out with the lad on a comeback outside, and lad just beats them. Um, when you expect the run to come so hard and so fast, so look at how far Alabama goes in them. All the linebackers go down. You see full extension by the line, and then they only realize it when they're a yard deep that hey, we got Brock Bowers rolling out that we have to worry about. He isn't even accounted for, in this play. And then you get Ladd going over the corner and coming back, and there's nobody there for Brock. So 15 has to slip off, cover him. So there's no rush at all on Beck to make him make a hard choice to throw it. So Beck just rolls out with all the time in the world, no pressure, just makes a good throw to the sideline.
I'm sure this was
Thanks.
a good route by McConkey. He's a great route runner, but you do see the amount of space that is being given, even if it was a good route. And I always like to see the talking between players, and of course I don't have any other copy of this, so I can't see what happened when he broke down on his cut for this route. But it's almost as if 3 is telling him, "You better be lucky that we're playing off of you right now." I don't know that, but I like watching that, inferring like there's a conversation that goes between people, and 3 sitting here like, "You're lucky that you had so much space. I'm gonna get you next time. I'm gonna get you next time." Is what he's saying there. We're gonna play up on you. I'm gonna get you, and they do later on in the game.
Yeah, they do. Here you'll see them just give it off to Kendall Milton off tackle. So that's another problem with Georgia all year. Their running backs have been hurt, so they've had to use backup running backs, walk on running backs. Say their main running backs this year has been Dejon and Kendall Milton just because of injuries. You've seen Dylan Bell switch from wide receiver into running back at times. You've seen Cash Jones get in the backfield at times just because of injuries and everything else going on in that running back room. So not many of these guys have played consistent snaps all year. And Kendall Milton's probably the best one coming into this game, him and Dejon, so you have to feed them. And they go off tackle here. Not the fastest backs that we have. They're mainly both power backs, if we're being honest. Not really elusive. But it's still a good look. You get a one-on-one here with a corner. So I mean, it's at that point you have to make something happen, cut outside with number 3 and try to do something with Terry and Arnold right here. But Milton just goes right off tackle and gets tackled by 91. Arnold don't really have to do anything. So I
Well,
mean,
I'll tell you.
go ahead,
Go
Alt.
ahead. No,
No,
go
you
ahead,
go
and
ahead.
I'll cut it after you. Well, the thing I wonder about this is that, and this is something I mean that I've seen out of Milton, and I'm no expert on Georgia, but I I don't know. He strikes me as the kind of guy that's probably better off just lowering his head and going straight ahead. Because the question that I have about this one, so there, a you're in a H-back set, kind of like, I guess the nasty split's what people will call it, where you got the guy who'd be the wing who is inside of the tight end. So you motion out. Okay, he comes across the formation, and this is what you'd call a split zone. The idea of a split zone is that there's going to be a crease that opens up someplace in the A gaps. Well, watch what happens, especially watch here. You can, whenever you see the number 77's jersey with his back turned to the screen, look at the little hole that opens up right there. And I wonder, like, just roll it just a little bit more right there. You start to see a hole open in the center of the line.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the spot I'm talking about. And he's already bypassed that hole. And whenever you bounce outside, it's a rare back that can bounce outside and make a defense hurt. Typically, what happens is you are contained by that cornerback, and you have a safety coming down because they see that there's a committed run, and you're not going to get more than maybe 2 yards. So I wonder what would have happened if he would have approached that a little bit differently, because I think a hole does open. Maybe it's too late, but see, you see it. It's a much bigger crease. And I mean, the argument could be made that the looks like number 13, that maybe he commits on over that way because that's where the ball's going. But nevertheless, I mean, there's separation that happens in the middle of the line there, and I wonder, when you're doing that split zone play, the idea is not to bounce outside. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he saw something, and I'm seeing it after the fact, but I wonder what that would have been if he could have stuck his foot and cut back. I just think it could have been a better play.
And this is something else that kind of calls the rest of the game. Georgia really tries to run the ball outside all through the game. We talk about that toss play that comes to effect later, but even this, like he, you would have liked to see this go inside just to give it that shot. does that linebacker make that play? Does an offensive lineman kind of get through to help, a few more yards? And obviously, we know they score on this drive, so it ends up not mattering. But the idea does matter because it seems like Georgia thought they could get the outside run game working, and they kept going back to it, and it kept failing. The best that we've seen from true outside run has been 4 yards so far in their good drive, and they have a couple plays that they get it, but for the most part, they don't make Alabama hurt on the outside run. Well, you're not. I mean, unless you have some misdirection and you're able to use space and utilize it that way to get the outside run game working. Just running it from the back without really a whole lot of movement other than one receiver going in motion, you're not going to get that against Bama. Their defense this year may not have been as good as previous Bama years, but they were still good, and they do still have supreme talent who they are very quick. And you're not, as a running back, especially starting from the middle, you're not going to get the outside very often. Even on the toss, they're going to come down really quick on it, and they're going to make that play. So and we know like this play is kind of inconsequential on this drive because they score on the next one, but the idea is not inconsequential because Georgia seemed to want that and it wasn't there, yet they still kept going back to it, which is just a head scratcher.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Georgia, the way they like to run their offenses with the tight ends in a bunch set, and they like to run to the power side or wherever they think the numbers game is an advantage for them. And you see it right here. It's the same thing. They think they have a numbers advantage right here. They do, so they run that way, and it usually works out for them. But later in the game, they kind of get away from the numbers game advantage. And they don't really shift out of it, and they just kind of running it, and it gets killed. That and Alabama's players just wanted it more. It seemed like, and were blowing up plays more than I think Alabama has most all year, and more than you've seen Georgia let people do all year to them.
This right
Same.
here, though. I mean, I would have, I would have stayed with this all night. And this is just a standard inside zone. They pick up every single person. Honestly, they impose their will. I mean, watch that center and guard open this hole. 65 already walls off the end where he can't affect it. Watch the guard, watch the center, watch the other guard. I mean, they pick up every single person. You could not have, you could not have executed this any better. I mean, this is a perfect run. Because whenever you start seeing those linemen get their backs turned to the hole, something's about to happen. And like that linebacker creeps down, he's already beat.
Yep.
And then the problem is whenever you get that play side linebacker beat, the backside linebacker, the one to the bottom of the screen, is going to have to try to climb over top of a mountain of bodies. And many times he cannot get there quickly enough or to catch the running back. And if you've got your, like you see this cornerback on the top of the screen, he's in man coverage. Wherever that receiver goes, that's where he's going to. Well, look at all the green grass that opens, or the space that opens for him since they're not on grass. It opens all that up, and that safety is really in a difficult spot to have to try to catch this running back with a full head of steam, headed toward the goal line. Now, maybe if this is a 30, 40-yard run, that safety probably could make a tackle on him. But from the 18, 17-yard line, this is a very easy run if you get it blocked up, and man, Georgia gets it blocked up very well.
Yeah, and while we all know what happened this game, this was a very good drive for Georgia. They really took advantage of what Alabama gave them, and it does really show a glimpse of the team that they had been the past 3 years.
Everyone here at Locked In wants to say thank you to all of you who have subscribed to, liked, and commented on our channel. We've got a blast bringing great college football analysis to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. If you want to share your thoughts, we'd love to see your comments. Till next time, stay locked in.